welcome back to the Warwick F1 show. I am here with, as ever, my co-host Chinmay, and we are going to be talking all about the US Grand Prix. As a Hamilton fan, this is not going to be one that is going to be especially fun for me, because obviously Lewis Hamilton took the lead after a slow Max Verstappen pit stop before eventually being overtaken with just 6 laps to go, 6 laps away from his first and Mercedes' first win of the season. Obviously Verstappen coming back from that slow pit stop to take the win in the end. There are lots of other drama as well. Actually, obviously at the start we saw George Russell colliding with Carlos Sainz. We're going to dive into that incident and obviously talk about who we thought was at fault for it. I think general consensus maybe says one way, but maybe one of us thinks the different way. Obviously we also saw a collision between Lance Stroll and Fernando Alonso on the back straight, deciding was it Stroll's fault? Did he move over too early? And I guess should Alonso have been penalised after the race, obviously receiving a 30-second time penalty, dropping him from 7th, which was an incredible recovery drive, down all the way to 15th. Obviously Sebastian Vettel as well, putting in a drive of the season really, sort of being consistently up there, leading a lap for the first time in, I think, for the first time since at least last year. And then, recovering even from a very slow pit stop for the Aston Martin team to finish the race in 7th place. And obviously it was one of those races that was a bit more interesting than I think we all expected it to be. But as I said, I'm here with my co-host Chinmay. So how you doing?
Yeah, not too bad.
I am not going to like you today, I'm going to be honest, because he was 6 laps away. It was so close. I thought he'd done it, like when the slow pit stop happened, but apparently not.
But it just says it all. It's the Verstappen era has officially properly begun this year. And unfortunately, it is the end of the Hamilton era. It's a changing of eras now.
Oh,
it is what it is.
Don't say that. I mean, obviously, we normally start with our top 10. So, I mean, what would you give that race out of 10? And I mean, maybe as well as, where would you sort of rank it in the races of the season? Because I think it's fair to say most people have found the 2022 season to be a lot less exciting than the 2021 one, but that race fairly up there in terms of the races of the season so far.
I'll definitely give it an 8.5, 9 out of 10. Just generally because I'll say 9 out of 10 definitely. Maybe stretching to 9.5. Mainly because it was a really, carnage pack race. You've had so much, you had the crashes, you've had really good racing, you had the strategies involved. I think it was yes, there's also a bit of bias with Verstappen just showing the dominance that he's had this year, and maybe even more bonus points for Sebastian Vettel getting and Alonso's recovery drive. I think I'll just give it bonus points for that as well. So, I love the race. I want to talk about more.
One of the top 3 of the season?
Oh, easily one of the top 3 of the season, I'd say, in my opinion. Easily.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd agree with that. Obviously, Silverstone definitely up there. Bahrain, Saudi Arabia at the start of the season. Also, some of the best races that we've saw, but this one was definitely up there. Probably benefiting slightly from, obviously, that Verstappen slow pit stop. You'd assume that if that had gone to plan, it might have been a bit lower down, but I think 9 out of 10, a fairly decent score, and I think that's the one I'd give it as well. I'll run through the race results as well. So Max Verstappen obviously taking the win away from Lewis Hamilton, who eventually finished in 2nd place. Charles Leclerc coming home in 3rd with Sergio Perez in the other Red Bull in 4th, and that sealed Red Bull's constructors title, first one since 2013 with Sebastian Vettel and Mark Webber. George Russell recovering from that collision with Sainz at the start of the race to finish 5th. Lando Norris securing some very positive points for McLaren, especially in their fight with Alpine. Sebastian Vettel, as I said, recovering from that slow pit stop to end up in 7th, overtaking Kevin Magnussen on the final lap, or at the second to last corner, who eventually ended up finishing 8th. Yuki Tsunoda scoring his first points since May in 9th place, with Esteban Ocon in 10th in the Alpine and in the final points position. Guan Yu Zhou continuing his run of being very close to the points, but not quite getting in there with 11th. Alex Albon in 12th place in the Williams. Pierre Gasly having a bit of a poorer race, down in 13th, with Mick Schumacher again falling back due to Haas's inexplicable strategy techniques in 14th. Fernando Alonso finishing 7th on the track, but having the 30-second time penalty to push him back down to 15th place. Daniel Ricciardo with a very, very poor performance.
We're not talking about Danny Ricciardo today, please.
Well, we'll talk about him right at the end when you predicted he rocked up in a Stenson. He did that on Thursday and on a horse.
Yes.
In the most Daniel Ricciardo ex-Texas thing I've ever seen in my life. Then, Nicholas Latifi putting in another sterling drive to finish 17th. It was not a good day for Latifi. And then the non-finishers, so Lance Stroll obviously colliding with the Alpine of Fernando Alonso on the back straight and coming home, or not even coming home, but classified in 18th. Valtteri Bottas spinning off at the second to last corner to be classified 19th. And Carlos Sainz, the first retirement obviously happened right at the start. And why don't we start with the start, because it always makes sense to do it like that. We saw Sainz put it on pole outright, even with Charles Leclerc's engine penalty. Sainz putting it on pole, lining up alongside Max Verstappen. And I think it's fair to say Austin in particular is, as far as I can remember, maybe with Belgium as well, the place where you almost don't want to be on pole. Yeah.
I mean, especially with how turn 1 is on COTA, you have to be very, very hot on your toes, because, it's one of the tracks where there's actually a solid couple of places where you can overtake on the track, and especially with turn 1 being one of the most, we ended up having one of the more chaotic starts of the season with the whole incident we had with the our pole sitter and George Russell. But yeah, it's good to see Sainz at least showing a bit more pace this weekend. This weekend, I think more or less he was on par, if not faster than Charles Leclerc. So it was good to see the Sainz at least just show a bit more pace this weekend.
Yeah, and obviously showing pace but not getting that good start, being overtaken by Max Verstappen. Off the line, I think Verstappen would have been ahead into first place regardless of how it ended up for Carlos Sainz. But then wild second Mercedes storming up the inside and taking Sainz out. Obviously George Russell colliding with Carlos Sainz. And I think there's a few things to talk about the incident. So first off, it was sort of very much George Russell's fault, I think it's fair to say.
No, I don't know what's going on to George Russell lately. I know he's probably reached his rough patch now that he's had, because obviously he hasn't had that many so far in his relatively short F1 career so far. And this is only his first season at our top team. But yeah, I think he needs to just learn how to calm down and really basically just try and get out of trouble, because he's had quite a few incidents now. We probably talk about Singapore, it's probably especially with, I don't know why he decides to hit Schumacher, and now he's
and Bottas as well, obviously on the long straight through Singapore. So are we saying it was Russell's fault? He did seem to outbrake himself. He said Sainz turned across him, and
no,
you know what? The commentators were very Sainz turned, Martin Brundle was saying a lot that Sainz turned across Russell.
I'd probably say a little bit controversial opinion here, but Sky Sports do have a history of having a bit more of a British bias. So, but it's if it was any other lap, the line Russell took wasn't actually bad. But the thing is, you don't take that sort of a wide line ever in the first corner of any race on any track, because that everyone is literally around you. So I don't know what Russell was thinking by trying to take that wide line, because he knew that Sainz was fighting Verstappen. Sainz Sainz would not be keeping too much of an eye behind him. And the fact, because obviously Sainz tried to do that switcheroo with Verstappen and try and go around the outside of turn 2. So I don't know what Russell was doing there, to be honest, that's all.
Yeah, and obviously it did cost Sainz. He retired from, I mean, F1 cars are so weird in how some cars can be seemingly made of diamond and just be the hardest things on earth. And you compare it like the Alonso incident, that man flew through the air for about 150 meters, collided with the barrier and finished 7th. Sainz gets a bit of a clonk on the rear and has to retire instantly. It doesn't make any sense.
Probably the best example is just rear wings. Not rear wings, front wings. Just how with Hamilton's front wing deciding it doesn't want to brake at all.
To be fair, it did brake afterwards in Singapore.
Yeah, but it took a long time for that to actually happen. But
yeah,
the amount of times Hamilton's clicked his front wing and then it doesn't actually
Hamilton's front. That's the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix last year. How did Hamilton's front wing survive that collision?
Yeah,
I'll never know. But we'll talk a bit more about George Russell. And I saw a lot on Twitter about how Russell has now become a bit of a dive bomb, a bit of a risk to race. And I think it just shows how quickly opinions can turn on a driver. So obviously, first half of the season, Russell is seen as the golden boy of F1. This man is putting in consistent top 5 finishes in a car that realistically at the start of the season was not far away from being just above the midfield, let alone being even closer or being close to the Red Bull and the Ferrari. And now he's just seen as a danger to society. So he collided with Perez in Austria, Perez in France, Singapore, obviously Bottas and Schumacher, Sainz here. Am I missing any of them? I feel like there's one more that I can't remember what it is.
Probably, but that's more crashes than is really should be acceptable for somebody of his caliber. I think that's what it is. But it is the joys of F1 Twitter, just how quickly, how disloyal they are, unless you're Team LH. But, you know.
Don't get me started on Team LH. They make me sad to be a Hamilton fan at some point.
They do.
But no, do you think it is just, a sticky patch that George Russell's going through? Do you think that maybe the pressure of obviously beating Lewis Hamilton at the start and now seem like being fairly comprehensively outraced by obviously the 7-time world champion, I did not mean to do that, 7-time world champion.
We don't know what the penalty is just yet, so you never know.
Maybe, we'll see.
Never know.
But no, definitely 7-time world champion. Do you think that pressure is getting to him a little bit, or do you think that he just went through a real purple patch? It is his first year in what can, maybe on its day and with a bit of luck, be a race-winning car.
Yeah.
Do you think that that's just it?
Yeah, it's just rough. I think it's just more of a rough patch. Everybody goes through this time. I mean, Verstappen had that whole patch in 2018 when he crashed in qualifying Monaco, prime example, and obviously crashed with Ricciardo in Baku. So, you know, Verstappen's had the rough patches. Grosjean had a rough patch for practically his whole career.
To be fair to Grosjean, in 2013, he was on fire.
Yeah.
He if Vettel hadn't suddenly become Senna, Prost, Schumacher and, I don't know, Clark combined at the back end of that season, Grosjean would have at least a win or two.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, so he's just getting into it, Russell. I think it's harsh to blame him. Obviously, it does look bad because he is taking out, I think it's fair to say, but obviously Verstappen's won the title. It seems to be Perez versus Leclerc for second, and then sort of maybe Sainz, Russell, and maybe Hamilton if he gets a bit of luck.
Yeah.
For fighting for third place. No. Who have I forgotten? No, fighting for fourth place. Yes, fourth place.
Yeah.
There we go. But do you think it's just a unfortunate incident? And as well, he was given a 5-second time penalty for it.
Not enough.
Really
enough.
light.
Not enough. I'm sorry. He should, a minimum 10-second penalty was there. Because you actually took out the pole sitter and literally, we got rid of a really good first place fight. I mean, we did end up getting a really good one at the end of it. But, you know, the one that we were expecting was ultimately taken out in the first corner by Russell. So, yes, it's a rough patch he's going through, but that was just a bit of carelessness.
So, and obviously with that, it comes back to the ongoing debate about penalties, and our actions, should consequences be taken into account? Because, obviously, if Sainz doesn't spin, maybe gets a bit of damage and falls back a few paces, Russell might not get a penalty, might get that 5-second penalty, but as it is, Sainz goes to the back and then retires. Do you think that realistically, and obviously maybe it's something that I think the FIA have been quite against, but do you think that now, and maybe just accept that consequences should play a role in how we give penalties? Because pushing Sainz being, I don't know, knocked a little bit, maybe not like half spinning, falling back to 10th, 11th, whatever, being able to continue.
Yeah.
A 5-second penalty is justified there, but with Sainz having to retire, it does look as though a 5-second penalty is a bit light, despite the fact that on the face of it, realistically, it's Russell colliding with Sainz. It's essentially the same thing apart from the consequence of the outcome.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I've always thought that, consequences should always take a big role, because every incident is different. It doesn't matter, like, the way people have collisions are different, and are different. But the thing is, the consequences always differ depending on what actually happens, So we had Sainz retiring, or
Well, I mean, Hamilton, Verstappen, and Silverstone last year.
Yeah,
for example,
Hamilton, Verstappen,
10-second time penalty there. On the face of it, why is it? Obviously, with the speed of the incident, maybe that was the factor. But then that's again adding context to the penalty. Yeah. So if we're going to give a 10-second time penalty there, a battle at the top of the grid between two drivers, one collides with the other, one is eliminated from the race, why does Russell get a 5-second penalty? Yeah. And the only reason you can say is context. Like, while Verstappen and Verstappen was eliminated in what was one of the most high-speed crashes that we've seen in a long time, 10-second penalty. Sainz is eliminated from a fairly little spin and then a water leak in his car, and that's a 5-second penalty. So it does feel like they're already adding context to the situation while then not admitting it in a way.
No, that's the one that you can't avoid. Is like the main way that you could really determine what penalty is fair is through pretty much just looking at what the aftermath is, because I mean we've seen this sort of incident before. I mean, we saw Hamilton hitting Albon 2019 and 2020, and Hamilton got a 5-second penalty, which I believe was justified, because yes, he hit Hamilton, but he never retired at the end of it, if you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
And both times you can kind of see why Hamilton went for that move, especially with Albon. Both occasions he wasn't really being aggressive enough. He kind of gave space for Hamilton actually to go around, to actually or at least Albon in Austria to actually go around the outside. So it is what it is. Hopefully the FIA just something sorts out with the regulations.
The FIA. We, as ever, are reliable in terms of controversy. And speaking of penalties, we are going to take a quick break now, and we're going to come back and talk about a penalty that maybe shouldn't have been given, and obviously that's the one between after Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll's collision, appealed by Haas due to sort of the nature of how they've been penalised this season, and obviously Alonso receiving that 30-second time penalty. We'll talk about the collision and the penalty that comes with it after this break. We are going to now talk about the Alonso incident with Lance Stroll that took place sort of halfway through the race. I think at that point, it was sort of a race that had petered down a little bit. Obviously, we saw that safety car for Valtteri Bottas's spin into the gravel trap. I think most people accepted should have been a safety car. It was in quite a fast corner, quite a dangerous bit of the track. Saw the restart, obviously the safety car benefiting Charles Leclerc in particular. Ferrari finally getting some luck this season. So he climbed up to fourth place. But after the safety car restart, we cut back to the back straight, and there is absolute chaos going on the straight. we find out in the end that Fernando Alonso trying to overtake Lance Stroll, and Lance Stroll moves on the straight. Alonso launched up into the air, two wheels for about 150 meters into the sort of colliding side on with the barrier, so able to continue, while Lance Stroll's obviously rear tyre deleted from existence, basically does about 1 million spins and then is scared. Like, it's very lucky no one hit him, because it was right in the middle of the track, wasn't he? Yeah,
right in the middle of the track. And if literally things millimetrically could have it could have gone off a lot worse. I'm just literally looking at the replay now, and the way he hit the side of that, the way Alonso just hit the side of that wall as well, literally about probably 20 meters before that is like a little corner thing. It's like one of those Marshall post type thing.
Yeah.
And that could have been a lot worse, that impact on the side. And then obviously Stroll's spinning around on the middle of the backstroke. Everyone's literally going 200 miles an hour. So, it's, thank God that both of them were okay, and, nothing bad, like terribly bad happened.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, this was an avoidable crash in my opinion, but yeah.
Yeah, it was quite an avoidable one. It's one that we've seen could happen in the past a lot. And I think it was either Crofty or Brundle said it on commentary. You're surprised. It's one of those where you're surprised you don't see it happen more often. I think Verstappen in his earlier years was a prime example of probably moving a bit too late. And I think while there were some people, including my sister who was watching the race, didn't think it was entirely Stroll's fault. I've given it a few watch back, and it does seem that he moves slightly too late. And maybe, I don't know if Alonso is putting a bit too much risk on going so close to maybe where Stroll could move into. I mean, we obviously see some drivers go a lot wider around another car. So maybe there's a small amount of, not blame on Alonso, but there's a small amount that he could have maybe done more. I think it's fair to say Stroll was mostly at fault for the incident.
Yep, Stroll deciding that mirrors don't exist on his car again.
He was doing so well in the race.
I know.
He was up to third, and after lap one, I was like, what is going on?
He actually was doing well that race, and obviously it's something that he's done so many times before, just not using his mirrors. I don't know why he refuses to actually look at them, but
I think at this time he was using his mirrors, because he did sort of move over as a long way.
Yeah, but it was just too late. Well, he's learning.
He's learning that mirrors are there, but he needs to drive better. So he received a 3-place grid penalty. So obviously the stewards also thinking that he was at fault and knocked out of the race. So you can't really penalise a driver that has been declassified or has not been classified. And obviously it seemed for a while that despite the massive crash that we saw, it would barely have any consequence, because Fernando Alonso, in a performance reminiscent, I think, what was it? It was like 2017 Baku, where
2018 Baku.
Was that the one where he was like on two wheels at the end of lap one to get back to the pits, and then got points somehow? So that man goes from, I was really sad at that point, because my fantasy team had Alonso Turbo Driver and Lance Stroll.
Oh wow.
So I was at that point, I was losing my mind on how my fantasy team had gone badly again. But Alonso comes into the pits, and to be honest, he puts himself on a really, really good strategy by almost pitting at that point, because he doesn't have to do the second pit stop. Realistically, the hard tyres there was such a gap between the mediums and the hards in the length of time that they could go.
Yeah.
That the hards almost could have gone, for most people, could have gone another 10, 20 laps, and that's what Alonso used. How surprised were you when you saw him finish in 7th place?
Honestly, I'm not. I'm more surprised the car actually survived the incident. But the fact that Alonso got up to P7, I'm not totally surprised, because Fernando Alonso is just one of those drivers. He's one of the greatest drivers of his time. That's one thing everybody agrees with, that, he's done this before. Like we said, we talk about Baku, where that McLaren was an absolute truck that year. So, I'll personally say that the recovery drive in Baku was arguably better than what he did in this one. But, because the Alpine was a lot faster than the McLaren that he drove about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it was one brilliant drive. Only for the
killjoys at the FIA. And this was the thing. So after the race, Haas lodged a protest regarding the safety of Fernando Alonso's car. As far as I'm aware, they were complaining about the fact the wing mirror was flapping around until he eventually lost it, overtaking someone. Might have been Magnussen.
I think it was it was Magnussen.
Yeah. So he lost the wing mirror, overtaking another driver, and despite the fact that the car wasn't given a black and orange flag, which is the flag, for anyone that doesn't know, a flag for any technical or any damage that could be perceived as dangerous to another driver. If obviously something fails, the FIA or the stewards fly a black and orange flag to the driver, and they have to come in and sort out the part, change the part, or rip the part off, or gaffer tape back the part together, as we saw in Baku with Yuki Tsunoda. But no flag was flown. The car passed scrutineering as well. And then we saw him being given so it was essentially a 10-second stop-go penalty that was then translated into a 30-second time penalty, because he can't serve a pit stop after the race, and that dropped him back to 15th place. It just seemed very, very unfair it was unfair on a driver that had done so well, in sort of a number of ways, in that the damage wasn't actually that severe, and they weren't given the opportunity to replace it, because you'd think, for example, if they were, he would pit again, maybe under the safety car, he'd be at the back of the grid, and he could still climb up to 10th, 9th or 8th or whatever. He still has that opportunity, but with the 30-second time penalty, he just drops straight to the back of the grid and scores no points.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it was a bit harsh. I understand Haas's position of the protest, but
especially because Haas have been so affected by it, especially Kevin Magnussen.
And that meatball flag, I cannot.
So he's had a meatball flag in Singapore for his contact with Max Verstappen. I think he got one in Canada and one in Spain, as far as I'm aware. I can't remember where the third meatball flag was, but I think it might have been Spain after his collision with Lewis Hamilton. I'll let you Google that. I'll see if I'm right. I love these is Will Kingswood right at the F1 stats. But no, we saw the third meatball flag. You can understand why Haas are a bit aggrieved, because especially with Canada and I think more with Singapore, though that damage didn't seem to be that bad. And it's weird that they were given a meatball flag, and I can't keep calling it a meatball flag, black and orange flag, and Alonso wasn't. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, no. Yeah, it's just not really fair at the end of the day. Just how does it, we just need to, it's just the FIA again just need to really calm down and clarify and make the rules so much less vague. Because we saw it with the points system as well. We've seen it with the penalties about 1,000 million times this year. And now we have it with the reliability and the black and orange flag. It's just like, we need some sort of clarity. Because that's the biggest problem with Formula 1. I mean, and I'm probably moving a bit off topic again this time, but it's just the problem with F1, because the thing is, everyone's expanding at an alarming rate right now, especially in the US. Like, F1 as a sport is possibly the biggest it's ever been now, and thanks to stuff like Netflix and whole 2021 season and stuff like that. the FI just really needs to clamp down and really become a bit more concrete. Like, I mean, because you just look at cricket, there's like, how often do you really hear about rules about, I mean, there's a recent controversy about one of the run-outs in the last England-India Women's ODI because of a brand new rule that was literally just introduced like around the same time. But, you know, they just need to really just make everything more clear and less confusing. Please. Yeah.
He's just a weird one. And obviously, as we're recording this, I think there's a meeting tomorrow for Hassan sort of Alpine to hash out their differences. And it's potentially looking like that penalty could go. They better reverse that on Fantasy F1. If the penalty goes and he goes back up to 7th, they better be giving me my points back, because I want my points, and I need better points in Fantasy F1 to even have a chance of finishing anywhere near the top. You had a very good week. I think it was last week or this week.
I can't remember.
One of the weeks. I saw you right at the top. I
can't remember. There was one. I haven't tuned my fantasy league team since like May. So.
I'd need to check if I'm beating you, because that would be really embarrassing if I wasn't. But no, I think it's one of those where it's fair enough on Haas for them protesting it, because I think they've really received the short end of the stick in terms of black and white flags this year. It's obviously really sad for Alonso after such a amazing drive back up to P7, and as you say, it is again just about the FIA being consistent in their rulings. And I mean, we haven't even discussed it. Did you think it deserved a black and white flag, obviously, for the flapping wing? I mean, I remember in 2019 Japan, Leclerc had the same thing. Was he given a black and white flag for that incident?
I can't remember.
Or black and orange flag.
I don't.
Let me see. I'll give you the question while I look it up. So did you think it deserved a black and orange flag for the flapping wing mirror?
Maybe. I think yes, because you're losing your door. It's a flapping mirror. It's debris at the end of the day, so especially the way they treated Haas, they should have given the black and orange flag. But because they didn't, I don't feel that penalty was just so like over the top. I get like I said, I get why Haas protested about what you said, but you know, I really don't. I really think that the black and orange should have been given if they were going to give it to Alonso, but otherwise, and I think they should have been awarded the penalty, because I mean I think was it 2020 when with the Suzuka race where Leclerc was literally holding onto his wing mirror.
That was 2019. So I've got it here. So Leclerc holding onto his wing mirror. I think it was also part of the front wing as well, so that might obviously make the situation a bit different.
Yeah.
But obviously there's the famous shot of him holding sort of with his right hand as he turns through 130R in one of the most terrifying, awesome pieces of F1 we've seen in recent times. So I'll read it here. After initially informing the stewards that Leclerc would pit at the end of lap 2, the team felt his car was now safe because the end plate on his wing had broken off and hit Lewis Hamilton's car, which actually broke off one of the Mercedes wing mirrors. And they instructed him to stay out for they instructed Leclerc to stay out for a third lap, after which the race director ordered the car to be brought into the pits to change its front wing, which I would assume be done through a black and orange flag. So a bit different, because obviously the front wing was involved in sort of that part of it, and maybe that does obviously make the situation a bit different, but obviously we see a black and orange flag here. Precedent, which is a word that the FIA do not seem to know what the definition is, says that maybe Alonso should have been penalised here. But we'll take another break now, and we'll come back and talk about the finale of the race, the finale that made me exceptionally unhappy, maybe happy for at least 12 laps. I was very excited for 12 laps, and then reality and a Dutch Red Bull driver brought me straight back down to earth. Well, obviously Max Verstappen taking that win from Lewis Hamilton, overtaking him with 5 laps to go. Now we are going to dive straight into the climax of the race, and I think it's fair to say it wasn't looking, I mean, I've said it before, obviously, after the Stroll-Alonso incident, but even then it wasn't looking like Verstappen was going to get threatened for the win. And then the Red Bull mechanics decided, you know what, this guy has it too easy. We need to make it a bit more difficult for him.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Red Bull have made mistakes with pit stops this year, but this is probably the biggest one they have made this year so far. So, but definitely, I'm going to really give the kudos to the mechanics for actually making the mistake, because the race wouldn't be as good as it would have been if it wasn't for that slow pit stop. But yeah, is it what it is?
Yep, so Verstappen with an 11-second pit stop drops behind Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc to third place, and I'm sure any Mercedes fan at that point was like, oh my god, this is the time. This is when it happens. Lewis Hamilton gets his first win, but I mean, did you think it was on? I thought, to be honest, I'll go through what I thought. I thought it was on for about 3 laps, and I was like, this isn't on. Because Verstappen, it's just such a ominous threat. I think if Leclerc had been a bit quicker, I think, and held him up for like 3 or 4 more laps, I think Hamilton wins that race. But as it was, when he got past him so early, and to be fair to Hamilton, it was an incredible job keeping him behind for so long, but it was just as soon as he got DRS, it was all over.
That Mercedes is so poor in the straight line, it is painful. So how Mercedes go from the fastest in the straight line to literally the slowest is unbelievable.
Not even a straight line bit. I mean, it is a straight line bit, but that Red Bull in a straight line is a literal rocket ship.
Yeah, it's like he's coming back from 9/10 of a second, and he's literally dive bombing him at the end of the straight.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, I would criticize Hamilton slightly on how he defended on that corner, because I feel like, because the thing is, Hamilton had so much experience with Verstappen, he knows Verstappen's gonna dive bomb him, and I feel like what Hamilton should have done to really get a better defense is kind of just position, instead of trying to defend and making the move, is kind of position the car in such a way that he could have a better exit going into that hairpin.
My only counter to that would be, at that point, it was all over. Realistically, if Verstappen doesn't get him on that lap, he outbrakes himself or whatever, he gets him on the next lap, or the lap after that.
No, but then,
and at that point, Hamilton, basically, I'm sure he's still thinking about the title battle. If he finishes 6th, it will be his lowest ever finishing performance in an F1 World Championship. He doesn't want that. He wants to finish 5th, potentially 4th ahead of George Russell.
Yeah. And
at that point, he was gaining minimum of 18 points over Carlos Sainz. He was gaining 8 or 7 points over his teammate George Russell. And it's Verstappen in the quickest car by far at this point of the season. He's not going to risk it. Yeah, but then you also saw that Hamilton almost managed to battle him side by side going around the corner. And I felt if he had a better exit coming out of that corner, he might have been able to handle just to have a little bit of a fight. You never know. Because, until Verstappen got DRS, Verstappen wasn't chipping that quickly. No. Oh, it was so close. It's really just sad because I don't want Hamilton's win a year record to go. It's not. He's not going to win this year because you look at Brazil's like the final chance. I think. Yeah, Brazil's the only chance because the thing is Mexico is definitely Red Bull territory. Mexico has always been Red Bull territory. I mean, especially I'm predicting even more this year because of that straight line speed. Yeah. Because the fact that you're in Monza, you're running a medium downforce wing, and you're still faster than everybody. It just shows ridiculous how quick that car is, and especially because everyone's going to be running Monaco spec downforces because of the altitude of Mexico. So, So Mexico's not happening. Brazil could happen. Abu Dhabi, Perhaps, maybe, I don't know. Would be quite ironic if he won at Abu Dhabi.
No, you have to get pole position at Abu Dhabi to actually have a chance, because I don't think that anyone has won in Abu Dhabi that's when not on the front row.
Yeah, but fair to say, I think one of Hamilton are probably maybe not his best performance of the season. I think Hungary's up there, Britain is also up there, but one of his best performances of the season. And obviously, it's the closest he's come to winning a race. He could, if he'd not had issues in qualifying in Hungary, I think he might have won that race. If he'd not been unlucky with the safety car and like virtual safety car in Britain, he might have won that race as well. But it's the closest he's come to winning a race. And he didn't seem that unhappy about it, obviously saying afterwards that he's just happy the car has improved. And obviously after his very difficult start to the season where he was just testing different parts on the car, that he's come back from that. He's now comprehensively beating George Russell. He's realistically, he beat Sergio Perez in the other Red Bull quite comprehensively as well. We don't know how he would have gone against the Ferraris, but on that pace, do you think that Lewis Hamilton would have beaten Charles Leclerc in a straight fight? They both start it would have been like 2 and 5, I think. But do you think Hamilton beats Leclerc?
I would say yes. Mainly because that Ferrari, because the thing is, Mercedes had the problem with straight line speed and firing the tyres up. But then Mercedes didn't have but that didn't really hinder them much this year, other than the straight line speed against Verstappen. Whereas Charles Leclerc's tyre deg issue with Ferrari, it seems to be really holding them back. Because, you look at the qualifying pace with Carlos Sainz and the fact that he was 2 tenths ahead. I think he was 2 tenths ahead of Verstappen. And then you look at the race that Charles Leclerc was struggling to keep up with, just about managing to keep up with Hamilton's race pace when Hamilton was first. And it was only because and that's what we practically slowed down, that delayed Verstappen's charge of Hamilton really at the end of it. Because that Ferrari tyre deg is a bit of a concern for them at the end of the season. Yeah,
but we did obviously see a Max Verstappen win. He had to equal the record for most wins in a season, and on merit, probably did deserve to win that race. If he hadn't won it, maybe the pit stop 5 seconds longer. That's all it needed to be, 5 seconds longer, and it would have been fine. But the pit stop, maybe that's 5 seconds longer. He doesn't win it. You'd have to say it's fairly harsh on Verstappen for not winning a race that he did dominate throughout.
Yeah. Nah. Yeah, it's racing under
as much as we all want to see, maybe not Verstappen fans, as much as I think even neutrals at this point want to see Lewis Hamilton win a race.
Yeah.
Because I saw a Chamber F1 tweet that's sort of like, as a neutral now, I still want to see Hamilton win a race. It's keeping that record alive that I think a lot of people are invested in, just the one race a season.
I mean, the main reason I dislike Hamilton is just because of how dominant he was. And now it's kind of starting to become a little bit similar with Verstappen in a way, because how dominant he's been. I mean, it's still early days.
That's how F1 has worked since the dawn of time.
Yeah.
You never liked the dominant driver, but no. I think Verstappen, it was a very good performance from him, I think.
Yeah.
It's hard to say it's one of his best, because a lot of his performances this season have been very good. I saw an interesting tweet, actually, and we'll just finish it off about Verstappen. Do you think he's had an unlucky season? So I'll run through it quickly. Obviously, start of the season, retires in Bahrain and Australia. The red flag in Monaco, the essentially race-ending debris in Britain. Hungary, pit stop Hungary, qualifying issues, Singapore qualifying issues maybe as well. So with all of that, and I think there is more that I can't quite remember. Spain, he had DRS issues, a weird car obviously spun off into the gravel. Has Verstappen had, and I know it sounds weird to say, but it's something I did want to bring up because it is very interesting. Has Verstappen had an unlucky season that he's overcome by being really good?
when you put it in that angle, you can argue yes in a way, because you look at that many issues and you compare it to last year, and he did one or two points where he was really unlucky. As in, I'm mainly talking about when Bottas decided to go wee-balling with F1, live wee-balling with F1 cars.
He got unlucky. You could say Britain, unlucky.
Baku.
Baku was exceptional. Baku is probably the best example of like unluckiness. Maybe got slightly lucky in certain parts. Italy, maybe, and like with just the way the collision panned out. Russia, I think it's fair to say, was very lucky for Verstappen.
Yeah,
because it could have gone. It went from about what was definitely going to be a second and about sixth, or potentially could have been a first and sixth, to a first and a second, with that rain coming in. So maybe Russia cancels that out a bit. But this year, he has got ever so slightly unlucky. Do you think that the way he's overcome it has obviously been through having what is by now by far the best car on the grid?
Yes. And
potentially because some of the unlucky points have either been quite mild, or they have come at points where he can recover it. Like, if it comes in qualifying, he's in a car that's really quick and he can climb back up.
I mean, you can almost say that sort of... It wasn't really unluckiness, but probably a bit of a strategic mistake for qualifying. But then, obviously...
It's almost like if a Mercedes in 2016, or 2015, if they didn't have both drivers fighting for it, one's really far ahead, and then he keeps dropping back and just coming forward. I'd say it is unlucky, but it's unlucky at the right points.
Yeah.
Whereas you can look at
unluckiness.
Yeah, you can look at Lewis Hamilton's season, for example, and I think it's fair to say that at a lot of points this season, he has got very unlucky at the wrong points, and that's cost him quite good finishes.
Yeah. I mean, if we probably talk about possibly the most unlucky driver this year, it's probably going to be Fernando Alonso.
Oh no.
I would say that he has probably been the most unlucky driver this year, because you look at his points tally, and that is seriously nowhere near like showcasing how good he's been this year. I mean, guy's 42 years old. How is he driving that well still? Like, driving, because probably Kimi Räikkönen, I mean, let's be honest, actually, Kimi Räikkönen's not a good example. He just didn't care at that point. But, you compare with the drivers of the same, in fact...
Okay, well, like Schumacher back in the early 2010s, for example, in quite a midfield car, he wasn't putting in performances that you could say were as good as Alonso's now.
Yeah. In fact, you can even argue, say, Sebastian Vettel's.
You ruined I was going to do a really good segue about unlucky drivers and then go into Vettel.
But
my segue.
No. Yeah, I mainly talk about Vettel in 2020 and 2021, and those last 2 years of Ferrari. Aston Martin, especially this year, he's really put a step forward, and he has been hindered a lot.
Well, I can still go for... Well, speaking of Sebastian Vettel, I think Verstappen... I think it's fair to say that all the world champions at the US Grand Prix showed why they are world champions. Verstappen he's still in a very good car, but having to come back from that slow pit stop, overtaking Lewis Hamilton. Lewis Hamilton being 5 seconds away from, or just 6 laps away from winning in a car that is realistically not one that should be winning.
The one that's a car that's literally 7, 8, 10 slower than the rest.
I will maintain that the Mercedes W13 is worse than the Red Bulls of 2017 and 2018.
100%.
But better than the Ferraris and the McLarens last year.
Yes. No, because the thing is, look, the Mercedes, it's a very lonely third. And the fact that Lewis Hamilton was able to keep the lead for that time, the McLarens and Ferraris last year would have no chance of doing that. Whereas the Red Bulls of 2018 and 2017,
well, they won races in the end.
Yeah, they were still race-winnable cars.
Yeah, they won races on merit, like China 2018 with Daniel Ricciardo. Obviously, they always seem to do well around Mexico, Monaco as well. Yeah, they were always race-winning cars, but what was my point? It was the champions did well. So Hamilton getting really close to that win in a car that isn't one that looks like it should. Fernando Alonso, 180 miles an hour on two wheels for about 300 meters, colliding with the barrier, still finishing 7th before the FIA ruin everyone's fun and fantasy teams. And then Sebastian Vettel, having also one of his best races of the best race of the season for him, do you think?
I think so. P7 finish, and it was a commanding drive.
Should have been P6. And again got unlucky with
Aston Martin also doing slow pit stop.
They are not good at pit stops.
Aston Martin just finds some way to throw Sebastian Vettel's race out the window. I don't know how, but
Vettel, and then that overtake. The overtake on Alex Albon, the one around the long, it's like 16, I think it's like 17, 18, 19, 20 or something. Or
around the Turkey 10X one.
The discount turkey. But no, that was an exceptional overtake. And then obviously getting Kevin Magnussen right at the end. And you almost looked at that drive and thought, why are you retiring? Because it was such a good drive from what I think it is fair to say now. We've seen Red Bull improve a lot, Mercedes improve a fair amount, but that Aston Martin has gone from being an absolute nowhere car, back of the grid in the first half of the season, to I think it's fair to say now the 6th, potentially even at some races 5th, and this race maybe the 4th, 5th best car on the grid. And to be fair to Aston Martin, that's an incredible improvement from them.
Yeah. Especially if you look at last year, compared to last year with how rubbish they were. And they were just nowhere, even with the upgrades. And then, yeah, it's just sad to see Vettel retiring, man. Why does he have to retire? No, because I'm such a big Vettel
Have you seen Vettel's Instagram is now just childhood photos? It's so adorable.
It's so adorable. It's so sad as well. It's like, stay.
No, but that is how you should use Instagram. Like, get rid of all the other reels. I just want to see Sebastian Vettel's childhood photos.
I always maintain this. Him and Kimi Räikkönen are the two best personalities F1's ever had. Oh. I'm sorry. No one's going to change this bit. Sebastian Vettel and Kimi Räikkönen are the two best personality F1 has ever had, in my opinion.
Yeah. But no, I think... And he was so happy with P7 as well. You can see him. It was like, he was celebrating more than Verstappen was for winning the race.
Yeah.
And it was just, I think it was just nice to see, wasn't it?
No, he's happy. That's all they care. I think that's the main thing. Because I think, to be honest with Vettel as well, the realistic chances of him going to the front of the grid is pretty slim now. I mean,
he was leading a race.
I know.
Parallels. Did you see this? In 2012, Lewis Hamilton overtook Sebastian Vettel for the lead on lap 41.
Yeah.
In 2022, Lewis Hamilton overtook Sebastian Vettel for the lead on lap 41. It's just like reliving your childhood.
Yeah.
We're getting older.
I know.
All these new F1 fans like Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen.
Porsche is younger than us.
Oh no, don't say that. But we're like, yeah, Lewis Hamilton, Sebastian Vettel, Fernando Alonso, those are my go drivers. Oh, when they retire, we're actually we're gonna be old.
I know.
We're gonna be out of the sport. Oh no. And did you see that comparison photo of him at his first race and him at his, final race? It's just happy to see, and I'm glad in F1 at some points we can see some happy moments.
Yeah.
Before we finish off with the US Grand Prix, I think it's fair to say that very, very entertaining race, but we've sort of exhausted the amount we can talk about it. We'll dive into some news in the next segment. Any other stand-up performances that you want to talk about?
Lando Norris P6.
That's just Lando Norris. Yes, I know Danny Ricciardo's not the best person to compare to, but Danny Ricciardo was slower than Latifi for a lot of that race, and the way he got that McLaren, and he was very close to he was very lucky to get into Q3 as well, because that McLaren was not slow for a single lap, so kudos to him. I will hit you with the counterpoint that if everyone else hadn't had issues, he wouldn't have finished. Vettel, if Vettel, Stroll and Alonso would have beaten Lando Norris.
True.
In my opinion.
But still, it is racing at the end of the day. Yeah. Luck plays a big part of it.
Yeah.
So.
And it's all Lando Norris has always been up there.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Magnussen had quite a good race in here, managing to make those tyres last on a
he was the only person who did one stop of that race. So,
fair play to Kevin. And Yuki got his first points. Go Yuki.
Yeah.
Finally. They really missed an opportunity not putting Yuki next to Shaq.
I know. They did it again this year.
I will pay money to see Yuki Tsunoda stand next to Shaquille O'Neal. I just want to see, just for science, I want to see what it looks like and how funny it would look.
Just guess.
Promote Yuki to Red Bull purely for the US Grand Prix, just so he's got a podium chance. Just so when Shaq pops up, he can give the trophy.
Oh man, that would be hilarious though, honestly. The one time we won the US Grand Prix to be obnoxious, it isn't.
Yeah, who Ocon, just fairly standard performance. I think no one else had a very good one. Daniel Ricciardo was terrible.
Gasly got about 4 million different penalties.
Latifi spun and Bottas had an uncharacteristic error. He sort of just spun off into the gravel on his own.
Bottas has just not been there since after the first 5 races.
To be fair, that Alfa Romeo hasn't been there for a lot of it.
Nah.
I've said it before, I think last week, but that's the reason there's such a discrepancy between Bottas and Zhou, is that when Bottas was ready for it, when he's been in F1 for a long time now, he was up there and able to score those points, where Zhou was still getting into it, and by the time Zhou has now got up there, then he can't score those points, but still 11th place.
Yeah, and yeah.
But
speaking of Sauber,
no, stop. I was just going to ask one more question. Okay. We will come to Sauber. Who was your driver of the day?
Seb.
I want to say Alonso. I know Seb did so well, but I think it's a combination of that car this week was the 4th best car, and Seb obviously he came back, very good performance, but Alonso crashed, somehow still made it up to P7 from last place. I think just about give it to Alonso.
Fair enough.
But I think this race showed why all of the 4 drivers that are on the grid that have world championships have those world championships.
Yep.
And that shows that despite 3 of them being in their mid-30s, Alonso in his 40s, that they're still, I would say, a cut above the rest in terms of performance.
Yeah, I think I'd say.
And that is why our generation is better than all you young people's generation. Back in my day, the F1 drivers were really, really, really good. But we'll finish it off there. So obviously, US Grand Prix, one of the best races of the season, I'm sure, when we come to our race rankings that we'll do at the end of the season, we'll probably put it as one of the higher ones. We are going to take another quick break now and talk about the news that happened, or has happened, over the last week. Obviously, the tragic loss of Dietrich Mateschitz, the founder of Red Bull, obviously a pioneer in terms of getting loads of drivers, Red Bull into F1, who have now become the behemoth that they are today. And we'll also be talking about Audi's acquisition of Sauber. They've chosen Sauber as the team that they're going to go into, or that they're going to enter with in the 26th season, becoming a factory team, which I think a lot of people maybe weren't expecting, running with their own bespoke engines as well. We are going to be talking about the news that has happened this week. Obviously, we'll start chronologically, and the tragic passing of Dietrich Mateschitz, obviously the founder of Red Bull. He's a pioneer in F1. Obviously, Red Bull entering the sport in 2005, taking over the Jaguar team, and he's made such an impact on the sport since 2000. Realistically, since 2009, Red Bull have always been up there challenging for race wins, and apart from maybe a few years, they could have, like 2014, 2017, 2018, they've always sort of been in that hunt for the world title as well.
Yeah, I mean, just the stuff that Dietrich Mateschitz has done for the sport is monumental. I mean, I think they started around the early 2000s with the Sauber team. They were the title sponsor, or I don't know if they were the title sponsor, but they were like they were a stakeholder in the Sauber F1 team at the time. And then 2004 they had a falling out because they refused to put one of the Red Bull juniors in this. I can't remember who it was. So obviously that formed the Red Bull team. Late 2005 they bought Minardi, which made Toro Rosso. And obviously the whole Red Bull Junior program. Obviously we've like the fact that almost half the drivers on the grid are former Red Bull juniors. We got Max Verstappen, Sebastian Vettel, Carlos Sainz, obviously Ricciardo, Pierre Gasly, Yuki right now, Alex Albon's on the grid.
Oh yeah.
So you know,
well, that's 7 of the 20 drivers. As far as we're not missing anyone, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, I can't remember anyone else off the top of my head.
No, I'm trying to racking my brains now, and I don't think
it just shows the success of the Red Bull Junior program. Unlike cough Alpines,
we don't talk about Alpines.
Yeah,
Junior program. Obviously, this did delay the announcement of the Red Bull punishment. Obviously, we found out that they have been given was it ABA, acceptable breach agreement?
Yeah, I think
so it does admit guilt, and rumours are it's a reduction in 25% of wind tunnel time
and a massive fine as well.
Now, you might know a bit more about this, but because you're an engineer and study a proper degree, but how is that is that really big for anyone that doesn't know? How much would 25%? If you don't know, then we can.
I don't know the exact details, but you know, I think especially with Red Bull, they're going to get about 90% of the regulations anyway. So
so with the
pretty much what it is, they're just going to be a lot more restricted on the amount of testing they can do. So what that effectively means will slow down how quickly they can develop the car. Because especially with F1, and especially with the ground, aerodynamics plays a massive part with the car with the building of the car and stuff. So kind of just put a name in terms, really, it would just, they won't be able to develop the car as fast as people as much and as fast as like Ferrari or Mercedes and any other team, because they'll have to be very, very careful with what they do and stuff. So yeah, I suppose it'll hurt them. It'll definitely hurt them for next year. And
obviously they may not accept the acceptable or accepted breach agreement. It is an admission of guilt to all intents and purposes, and obviously it would go before an FIA tribunal, who might go less and they might go more. They might go up to even stripping Max Verstappen of the 2021 world title and giving it to Lewis Hamilton. But again, we sort of have to wait and see. I think talks in this article I've just got here picking back up in the middle of the week. So while you did say we did get some news for the show as we're recording, guarantee it comes tomorrow, and then we miss it. We miss it for another week.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised.
We always miss news on this show, but no,
it's just a massive curse we've had since last year.
But I think obviously bringing it back to Dietrich Mateschitz' death, I think it's fair enough that they did delay it. I think.
Yeah, is there something I respect? I mean,
and anyone that's criticising Red Bull for celebrating their constructors' title in the wake of obviously its tragic passing is a moron.
Because you're celebrating and you're dedicating it to Dietrich.
So first off, Red Bull have consistently said throughout the weekend, Dietrich would hate a minute's silence and would just want you to play music and keep going.
Yeah.
And they're dedicating it to him. So anyone that's saying, and I've definitely seen a few people on F1 Twitter, and this is why I hate Team LH a lot of the time.
Please can we not talk about Twitter for the rest of the episode?
I
beg you.
No, but they were celebrating and it's fine, and obviously while it is a sad thing, it's a celebration of someone's life, and he saw Max Verstappen win the title a few weeks ago in Japan, and now they're celebrating that they've won their next constructors title here. So bore off.
I think just adding a bit more on Dietrich Mateschitz, because obviously I've mentioned the Red Bull teams and stuff, but another major thing as well that some people do forget is that the fact that he completely revived one of the biggest Grand Prix on the calendar, the Austrian Grand Prix, would be nothing if it wasn't Dietrich Mateschitz revival.
To a lesser extent, the Dutch Grand Prix wouldn't be on the calendar.
Yeah.
If Red Bull weren't there, Verstappen's not there, Dutch Grand Prix doesn't come back.
So, I mean, and especially with the Austrian Grand Prix, it's always consistently been
Austrian
one of the
Grand
best.
Prix, there's a small category of races that are never they can never be bangers, but they're always going to be decent.
Yeah.
Like, for example, Silverstone has that potential to be a bit more boring, but it has the potential to be a banger. I think Brazil's like that as well.
Yeah.
But there's I think the US Grand Prix that we just had, Austria, there are a few others. Bahrain, I think, is another one as well. They're always going to be decent.
Yeah.
And occasionally you might get a really good Grand Prix from there. Obviously 2014 Bahrain, a prime example of that. But the Austrian Grand Prix is always going to be a good one. And I think we do have, as you say, Dietrich Mateschitz to thank for that. Another bit of news that has come out today as we are recording this, or as we're going out live on the radio. Audi have chosen Sauber to enter Formula One with. So, obviously, 2026, new engine regulations are coming in, obviously simplifying the engines a bit, making them a bit cheaper to run, and that has enticed Audi into the sport for the first time. And they have chosen to buy a stake in Sauber. I think the car will be renamed Audi. They'll run Audi made engines for themselves, and obviously we will see Audi on the 2026 grid. So Alfa Romeo are ending branding of the team after next year, so we're going to get Alfa Romeo this year and next year, then Sauber are going to return in a named format in 2024 and 2025, and then Audi from 2026 onwards. What do you think of that?
No, first of all, it is one of the worst kept secrets in Formula One, because everyone's known for ages that Audi were looking to buy Sauber anyway. But, definitely, no, it's definitely a welcome addition. Hopefully it will be a good chance for Sauber to actually come back towards the front of the grid. I mean, the last time they were around the front of the grid, Sauber was owned by BMW at the time.
Yes, we do not talk about the 2008 Sauber BMW, because that was the most inexplicable decision in the world, to stop developing that car as your driver is winning the world championship. Doesn't make any sense. Please.
No, we're not. Yeah, I'm not going to talk about that. But I think especially with Sauber, they've just come out.
I just respect how Sauber seem to just hang around. They're still there, and they sort of just let other.
They've had they've had at least 14 different times where they've been properly financially strained.
BMW. Obviously, Sauber were in the sport for a fair while. Alfa Romeo have now come in, then Audi coming in after that. No, I respect Sauber. I think they've done very well for themselves. And I mean, with the might of the Volkswagen Group behind them, you'd assume that in a few years, maybe, hopefully, 2030. Oh God, we'll be so old. Let's not think that far in the future. But you'd think that in the future they might be able to climb up the grid. And obviously it is coming with all the know-how you're combining the know-how of the Sauber Formula One team, a team that in the past has been quite successful in terms of their results. Obviously 2012 probably a highlight for the Sauber team, very close to a few race wins in that season. And that's just the expertise that Audi are going to get with that, along with Audi's and the Volkswagen Group's money, is going to be invaluable.
Yeah, and especially with Audi's Audi do have a proven history as well. I mean, we have the World Rally Championship history with the Quattro and everything. We've got Le Mans and endurance racing and stuff like that. How successful, how quickly they became successful in that team as well. But then I think probably the only thing with Audi that they need to be they need to look out a bit is with the fact that they decided to become competitive within 3 years.
Yeah.
And the last time a team said something similar to that was Honda,
Renault. Renault.
Yeah. So, they've already put the big expectations on themselves, and Formula One is a completely different ball game to LMP1 and...
Yeah. In some other good news, the FIA admitted recovery vehicle mistakes at Suzuka. So, obviously, I think most people accepted they made mistakes. The FIA, hopefully, gonna not do the same thing in the future. And they have also amended the rules on points, and now any race that is shortened from the start but can still finish will be short. I think that's sort of the only thing they really can do. The fact they've admitted mistakes, they've not been like, oh, this happened and that's why we did it. I think it's the best thing that they can do at the moment. I think
it was just a genuine accidental loophole they made with the point system anyway. I think that was something a bit more trivial. Because, that sort of incident that we had with the Japanese Grand Prix is very rare anyway. Because most of the time when the race is, partially finished, it's, suspended, so...
Yeah. And they have abandoned the rotation of race directors. So Niels Wittek, only in place for the rest of the season. So Eduardo Freitas, who was race director in Japan, will not be race director for any more races. Maybe a slight punishment under wraps. And to be honest, while we all thought maybe rotating race directors was a good idea, it doesn't look like that experiment has come out very well. And the fact it's made us all sort of not miss Michael Massey.
I actually do miss Michael Massey. I just miss his sassiness on the radio.
Oh, Michael Massey.
It was so funny though.
I've Stockholm syndromed myself into liking Michael Massey.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is okay. But no, so that is probably the best thing the FIA can do, and they've rectified the situation. And the final bit of news that we're going to talk about, Williams have sort of announced their next driver.
Yeah.
Assuming he does well enough, and this is a fun system. So in Texas, and thinking about it, we should have expected
I think he's getting a second FP1 session in Abu Dhabi as well, by the way. That's also confirmed.
We probably should have thought about this, that it would make sense that he would be announced in Texas. But Logan Sargent, the American F2 driver, will race for Williams in 2023 as long as he qualifies for an F1 driver's super license, which is like a driver's license for race drivers. And he just needs to finish I think it's P6 and F2, and currently he is P3 at the moment anyway. Let me have a quick look at the F2 championship and see how likely that is that he will. It's fairly likely because Sargent's been the most on form of the four drivers that potentially can, because the thing is, the 5 for P3 is still really up there. Oh my god, it's close. It's very close. Sargent's on 135, then we've got 3 drivers on 126, so we've got Doohan, Daruvula and Fittipaldi, and then Lawson in 7th, so basically the driver that, if he finished behind, so he's 12 points ahead of where he needs to be. Yeah. Daruvala's on form, Fittipaldi got 15. Sargent, you said he was on form, he hasn't actually, he's scored since France, and that is 5 rounds, he's scored 20 points. Oh. So that's not brilliant. Okay, so I'll take that back then. So it's a bit, He had a good start to the season, but he's struggled since. So, could be, maybe could be a close one. We'll have to wait and see. But I'm happy he does, actually, because, it'll be nice that the Williams Drive Academy actually gets one of their own drivers in the seat finally. Do you think Sargent's a good pick for Williams? Can be. Like I said, we will not be able to tell. Because I remember last year we were pretty critical on Guanyu Zhou about when he came, because the fact that, yes, he became second last year in F2, but, he had been in the sport for a very long time. To be fair, I think we were all being gaslit by how bad Mazepin was at that point. It was like, why are we letting F2 drivers that haven't won anything into the sport? But no, as you say, Zhou has actually been performing very decently. But it does mean we finally lose Lord Latifi. So, is it worth bringing him Logan into the sport?
Yeah.
Just about.
Yeah.
No,
I know we actually I think Williams just need a good driver in that second seat.
Yeah. I think Logan Sargent, he's quite inexperienced, obviously 1 season in F3, 1 in F2.
No, he's had 3 in F3 actually.
3 in F3, 1 in F2.
Because he was in Carlin Buzz, I think he was in Carlin Buzz for his first season. The second one was in Prema where he actually fought a lot with Oscar Piastri because
I remember that was
20,
was it 20, it was 2020. It had to have been 2020 because it ended in Tuscany.
Yes, because that was a fantastic season because it was all 3 premium drivers were in contention of the championship. Then it went to Piastri and Sargent.
Yes.
And then Sargent had crashes in both the last 2 rounds, which basically allowed Porsche to basically just grab second in the championship that year.
No, Sargent, he's slightly inexperienced, but he has actually performed incredibly well.
No, he does have a decent track record. So, 3rd in his debut season like Yuki Tsunoda was. Tsunoda was 3rd in his debut season with F3 as well. And even last year, last year he was in F3 with Carlin Buzz again, which is a low midfield team, and he did grab a win or 2. So, he does have a good track record.
F2 cars are faster than LMP1 cars. So I've just clicked on their Wikipedia page. That's
what?
As of 2020, the F2 lap record for Imola, which while roughly 15 seconds a lap slower than Formula 1, is 5 seconds per lap faster than LMP1 sports cars. That's insane. These cars are ridiculous. 20 seconds a lap faster than touring cars.
Well, at least LMP1 cars are much more reliable than F2 cars.
Yeah.
Their reliability is shocking.
We stand Mechachrome and their engines. We have nothing bad to say about Mechachrome and their engines.
Definitely not.
Let's hope that doesn't decide whether Sargent gets into the sport. But we will take one final break now, and we'll come back and obviously do our predictions. I think you had a better week than me. You're giving me a sly nod, so I think my one may not have gone very well. But obviously, we'll have to wait and see. We are now gonna dive into our predictions, and as I said in the previous segment, they've not gone well for me, as far as I'm aware.
They weren't the greatest, I would say.
From me or from both of us?
More for you. So.
Right, what are we saying in terms of how bad I was?
So, okay, I'll start with the podium. So the finishing order of the race was a Verstappen, Hamilton, Leclerc, thing. I said Verstappen, Perez, Leclerc.
Yeah, and then I said Verstappen, Leclerc, so that's what, 6v3? No, 6v4.
Yeah, it was a 6v4 on that. And then, and before I forget, going into that, I had a 3-point advantage coming in with a 48-45 to the predictions.
We need to go back and look at how many predictions we made and work out our average score, because I don't think it's going to be very good.
No, it's not. It won't be. I don't want to do that. And then, so for our 4 1-pointers, I said that Ricciardo wears a Stetson hat at some point in the weekend.
That was the most obvious 1 point. I shouldn't have let you have that. Should have been like a 0-pointer, because it was just gonna happen.
Yeah,
he rocked up on Thursday on a horse called Horsey McHorse,
which got his own F1 pass as well.
I've said it earlier, but it's the most F1 ex Danny Rick ex Texas thing you can think of in your life.
And Danny Ricciardo is or as usual, had that handlebar moustache. It's
not a good look. I'm sorry, Danny Rick, if you are listening, which I'm sure he is. Maybe ditch the handlebar moustache.
Yeah.
Right. So you got your 1 point.
I said the Haas will be in the top 8, which I was lucky because Magnussen got promoted to P8.
You're so lucky. You're losing those points if Alonso has his penalty rescinded.
Yeah, I'll take that back. You said Ricciardo will finish in the top 7.
Okay, yeah, that was a really bad prediction.
Which is like
I should have clarified there was a 1 before that 7 and I meant top 17th.
Yeah, because Ricciardo was for most of the race was slower than Latifi.
Yeah, Ricciardo, that was probably
It, probably it is his worst race of the season, unfortunately. Man, but then our 3-pointers, none of them went through. I said that the TV had an almost perfect weekend. I said that he doesn't crash this weekend, he wasn't last at the finishes, and he doesn't DNF, and he out-qualifies Albon.
You got 2 of them.
Well, he spun.
Yeah.
So technically he crashed.
It's not really a crash. I think we clarified the meaning of crash on the previous episode, and I think I said it had to hit a barrier at some point.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, and then you just said there'll be a third wet race.
I was one day out. It rained on the Monday in Austin. So annoyed.
You know.
So...
Oh yeah, your 1-pointer was an awkward celebrity interview.
That Brad Pitt one counts, surely.
Yeah, it does. I'm giving you that point.
Nailed it. So what did that end up being? 8-5?
Yeah, something like it was 8-5.
Yeah.
So no, 9-5.
9-5.
Because I said the Stetson one, the 1-pointer.
Yeah, so you got 3-6. Oh yeah, 9-5.
Yeah.
But it will be 7-5 if they rescind the penalty.
Yeah.
And I will bring that up.
So yeah, it's 57-50 going into the weekend.
Thing is, I wouldn't even be this close if Jack hadn't just pulled a worldie at France.
Yeah.
Because I'm just...
Jack, if you're listening,
he's the only reason.
You're a genuine legend.
He's the only reason I'm in this battle. If I lose, I will buy you a pint at some point. If you're circling in the copper rooms, then I will come and find you and I'll buy you a pint of purple.
I think F1 are doing at some point anyway.
Yeah. Are you in the copper rooms?
I think T-Bar.
Ooh. Well, we'll have to wait and see. We will quickly preview the Mexican Grand Prix and preview how far Max Verstappen is going to win it by, because ever since 2017, with the wide chunky cars, the Red Bull has had a stranglehold on that circuit.
Yeah. And especially with the rocket ship that car is in a straight line, because straight line speed is very important in Mexico.
It's the fastest, technically not the fastest track on the calendar, but it's the track at which the fastest speed has ever been reached. 370 odd kilometers an hour for Valtteri Bottas in 2016. 230 miles an hour in the F1 car.
Yeah, because the air is so dense. Because it's an awkward circuit because of the altitude.
No, the air's light.
Huh?
Air's light, surely, because there's less of it.
The air's less dense, I meant.
Oh, less dense. I thought you said so dense. Ignore me.
I can't remember what I said. But, yeah, so because air is, like, less dense and stuff like that, so the pressure's a lot lower, so... But despite being a high-speed circuit, everyone has to use Monaco level downforces on the track. So
except for Red Bull, because they'll somehow rock up with no downforce and still be 7 seconds a lap quicker than everyone else.
No, they'll just go on maximum downforce, and they'll still be faster than everybody in straight line. I don't know how that car was not so. You're in Monza. You're running a medium downforce swing. It's just insane. But
don't get me started. I think Mexico's always been I think Mexico sort of suffered from a level of dominance for one team. I think it would be a better race if it was like closer.
Yeah.
But it's always one that's fun. It's like the stadium section's cool. The race is normally decent. I don't think it's ever been. We haven't really had a special Mexico Grand Prix.
No, we haven't had one.
No, we've had some fairly decent Mexico Grand Prix.
No, I don't think so. We've had
that move. I was watching it back because they do all like the highlights and reruns for as build up. That move that Verstappen did last year was out of this world.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
Yeah, that was a really.
Yeah, and like basically every other moment in the season at that point, it won him the title. Because everything came down to such close margins that one thing lost people the title, won people the title. Third, second, I miss 2021, except for the ending. We don't talk about that.
I love the ending.
I don't. It might be being reversed, and then we can both love and hate it.
Yeah, I love it because it was so bad.
Oh, I remember that. I was watching it in a resort in France on the Warwick ski trip. And I did not have a fun time. But we will move on. We'll move away from Abu Dhabi trauma, and we'll move towards the predictions for the next race. So what have you gone for your podium?
I'm going to go in ahead assume that our first two were the same anyway. So Verstappen and Perez.
Yep.
And so I thought just to shake it up a bit, I know he's had a rough patch and he's not exactly been the most popular driver lately, but I put Mr. George Russell.
Yeah. Well, I've gone Verstappen, Perez, and then I've gone Charles Leclerc. In a very boring prediction.
But it's like, what else?
If they could stop sabotaging my predictions with engine penalties, it would be brilliant.
Nah, fair enough.
Right, what's your 1 point?
Perez gets pole position.
Ooh.
So
I've gone for everyone stands Perez's dad for a weekend. We see Papa Perez and everyone loves him and he's the most happy man alive.
You've already won the point.
Oh, come on.
I'm not. I'm giving you it.
I gave you the I'm having that point.
I'm not letting you revoke. I'm not revoking it.
I am 7 points behind. I need the points.
I'm not vetoing it. Go ahead.
Nailed it.
But I'm just saying, you've already won the point.
Guaranteed 1 point. What's your 2 point?
I said that McLaren outscore Alpine. Ooh. And Ricardo will outqualify one of the Alpines.
Both of them have to happen.
Yes.
Good. Yeah, it could happen. Wait, McLaren, Alpine, and Ricardo outqualifies one.
One of the Alpines.
Yeah, that's a 2 point. I've gone for Verstappen Grand Slam.
Yeah, fair enough.
That man will just walks off into the distance, taking points and the hopes and dreams of a competitive race with him.
Yep.
And then, what's your 3-pointer?
My 3-pointer, Verstappen laps everybody except the top 4. And... And Perez's dad has to come onto the podium for a celebration.
Oh, you don't have to add the Perez's dad one.
No, I'm adding that bit.
Alright.
I'm adding that bit.
I have gone for Alpine outscores one of the top 3 teams in terms of collective points for the race. So they have to score more points than either Mercedes, Ferrari, or Red Bull.
Yeah.
Because I genuinely don't know who's going to be good, apart from Red Bull, because they're obviously going to be good. But I don't know who else.
I can stick with that one.
No. But that's been everything. I didn't think we'd get this long into it. I didn't think it would take. I thought we'd be done a lot earlier. But we've managed to fill our time slot. Have you got any final words? Well, I definitely don't look up the schedule and promote the next final bits.
I don't think so, really. I think let's hopefully look forward to Mexico and the last 3 races of the season. Hopefully they're quite good. Yeah, well, thank you to everyone for listening to another episode of the Warwick F1 show, and we will be back next week, obviously, to talk about the Mexican Grand Prix. Obviously another one hosted by me, but obviously Chinmay and perhaps one of you, if you want to come on, you can come and guest with us here on the Warwick F1 show.